I mean, it's still.
I never eat this dog, so
Raise your eyes. Oh gosh. Yeah, how do you guys fall asleep on us now?
No, I'm not sure. Oh, that's great.
You can, yeah, you can write your name and your, just like
But your future is right.
yeah.
I was just looking at it.
Yeah, it's all like whiteboard.
Yes, you have actually done that.
Sharpie here.
Free.
All right, we're gonna call this meeting back to order at 8:17. I've made calls to director organizations. In fact, I just got a response from one of them indicating that they will probably be able to come in closer to 10 p.m. because they're currently working on a group project. So we have at least some orgs that should be able to come in, but one of them has already arrived as SAE Baja. So yeah, I do want us to go around with a round of introductions, so you guys are just like straight to the questions.
With a what?
Round of introductions, just so you, or do you want to?
I think we'll be all right.
You'll be all right? All right. Tori, it's SAE Baja. You have questions for them?
Did you ask anything?
No, I didn't. You guys have questions?
Yes, so my main question time for coordinators, student organizations, we've talked plenty, was regarding, so the request is the same for all three events. Historically, I know that it's to create the car. Are you making the car 3 different times, or is there a reason why the same request is in 3 times for the same exact stuff?
Yeah, there is a reason for that. In all reality, it doesn't cost, any of those individual amounts, I think it was 9,000 or something like that, or 7,000. It doesn't cost that much to make the car, period. This is an amount that contributes to make the car. All 3 of them aren't the whole amount that it costs. These are just things that contribute to make a car, and these are components that will be used at each competition. The components, for the most part, are engineered to last 1 competition. They're engineered for 6 hours of use, so they can be lightweight and high performance as possible. And because of that, they fatigue out, or they're starting to fail after 6 hours. So most of these things are things that either we want to have spares of, or that we can't use them again.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's my question.
That's why they're all identical. That cost split was, I don't remember who it was, I don't want to put on the bus or not that I remember anyway. At the advice of one of the finance board people, it said, just take the amount and just split it between 3. So that's what it's been done.
Yep. Michael, Nick, Candace.
So can you just give me kind of like a timeline of the event, starting from when you're planning on leaving campus to when you're planning on coming back to campus?
Of just one race?
Of, I guess, the event, yeah, the race.
Yeah, there are 3 events in the spring that we are registered for. 3 actual competitions that contribute to international ranking. You have to go to all 3 to get top 10 ranking. For each of them, we'll load up the trailer. We have a trailer. We'll leave campus, whatever time it takes to get there. We'll drive to the competition, however long that takes. First day of competition is just registration, engine check, and make sure you've got paperwork straight, all that good stuff. Second day, you'll do some static events. So you'll do the sales presentation, or you'll do design, your cost things. You'll do things like that, where you'll talk to industry professionals about your vehicle and what you've done in your design process, and why your vehicle is better than everyone else's. On the third day, you'll do dynamic events. So this will be acceleration, this will be maneuverability, this will be suspension traction, which is like an obstacle course designed to break your car, and you'll do a hill climb or a rock crawl or something like that. And on the 4th day, you'll have an endurance event, which is kind of the main event that we designed for. It's a 4-hour endurance race with all the teams on track at once. You race against them, you're awarded points based on how many laps you complete. If you break, then you're allowed to fix your car, get back in, get more laps. After that's over, sometimes there's a banquet or something like that. We'll stay for that, and then we'll usually leave either late that night or the next morning.
So in terms of days of the week, depending on the location of the race, so for the West Coast race, we usually leave probably 7 days in advance, just because that's 8 hours of driving. for 8 hours of driving a day, and we've got to go 3,000 miles to get out there. Plus, that leaves us plenty of time if the trailer breaks down or the rental truck has problems, because we've had those issues in the past. That way, we're driving during daylight hours, keeping everything safe. The competition will go from Thursday through Sunday. Like I said, we'll either leave late Sunday night, but we try and leave Monday morning, and then we can do the 8 hours of driving a day back to campus. So we can kind of, depending on location, it can be like a week and a half, 2-week period.
Yeah.
So what type of departmental support have you guys got?
We've gotten departmental support from a couple different departments over the years, from mechanical engineering, from COET. We're working with OIA this year to see if maybe we can get something from them. We've talked to the Comp department, we've talked to the physics department. We try to work around and talk to as many people as we can to find funding, not just in the university, but also outside of the university.
But a lot of those departments we talk to, but nothing really pans out.
Right.
The College of Engineering and Information Technology is always a consistent big one for us. But mechanical engineering last year decreased their funding by 50%, and this year it seems like they're not willing to fund us at all. So we've dropped a significant portion of our usual funding on a year-to-year basis. So that's why we're going to OIA and all these other departments, is to try and recuperate that loss. But again, it's not really working out because there's money shortages.
Dennis?
So I have a question about the Midwest competition that's
Right.
happening in June.
Okay.
Correct? Okay. Just want to confirm, so that's happening in June. And then looking at some of your requested materials, like, so the list that you provided, you're saying that those things are one-time use? And so you can ask for them 3 times?
I can't remember exactly every single item that's on that list off the top of my head right now.
Yeah.
But the majority of those items are things that we either fatigue out, or if we need 6 total throughout the year, we'll put 2 on each thing. We don't actually need 2, we need 6. If we need, let's say we need, 6 tires for the year, you're not gonna run 2 at every race.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what it was split at, so that,
So like a harness. If
Right.
you're on there 3 times, you need 3 harnesses?
ideally, yes, and
Okay.
not ideally, obviously, but if you get to these cars, they run through mud, they run through sand, they flip over, people run over your car, and they get filled with whatever debris is on track. Sometimes it's stone, sometimes it's sand, sometimes there's rebar,
Mm-hmm.
and the tightening mechanisms, they jam up, and the safety inspection tags, they wear off, they rip off. You can't get through tech without safety inspection tags intact and matching on all belts.
Okay,
These are 5-part belts.
sure. Okay.
Justin?
You guys indicate in your application for the Midwest that it's from June 2nd to October 6th. Is that just
That must have been a typo. Yeah,
That's
no,
okay.
we're not we're not taking our sweet time getting back. The duration's going to be the same as for the rest of them, probably, plus transit. Whatever it turns out to be. Competitions themselves are 4 days. Transit takes more.
I thought you were walking back for a second.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we're pulling it.
Any other questions for the organization? Zane, go ahead.
So I know you're just requesting for materials to build the car, but are the other funds that you're trying to get used for like registration fees and travel and lodging costs?
Yeah, absolutely. We do travel through the engineering department through COET. Karen and Becky office is amazing with that. You call her at some god awful hour of the day, she'll pick up. I like you all as much as anyone, but if I call you at 10 o'clock at night from New Mexico, I don't expect you to pick up the phone. But yeah, we do pay things like travel. The team pays for hotels. They don't pay for food for team members. We do pay for the registration fee through other things. Registration fees are $1,350 each this year. So yeah, we have a lot of operating expenses, just upkeep for the shop, machining purchases, raw material purchase. There are a lot of things that go into this that are not on that list.
Yeah.
Ryan?
Say hypothetically we were not able to fund 1 or 2 of your events how would you go about getting the money for the other 2 competitions that you want to go to, or would you consider not going to 1 or 2 of the events?
Right now, we're not evaluating not going to all 3 events, mostly because the way the ranking works, you get points from each event. The North American Series with the 3 U.S. competitions is the most prestigious of them. There's ones in Brazil, there's ones in Korea, there's ones in India. They're all over the world. And the way you maintain your international ranking is by going to all 3. So right now we're ranked 6th internationally. If we don't go to all 3, we lose that.
The reason we go to all 3 and make such a big effort to do it is because Dr. Hrabowski likes to use our international ranking as one of is a bragging thing for him. Because last year we ranked 7th in the world out of probably 1,000 teams. And so for us to be able to do that for such a small school with such a small budget is a big thing for him. And that's why he stresses to us a lot that we should go to all 3, and which is taxing because of the time during the year, but also the expense of it and everything. So we try to do what we can to go to all 3. In terms of funding, if we don't get it, I don't really know. That's why we're working with OIA, just to try and recuperate some of that. But I mean, we've lost $20,000 from the MECI department. We might lose some from outside sponsors year to year. So just trying to recuperate a lot of this money is proving difficult, especially because OIA is also looking for money for their own projects and things like that. So we're kind of on the bottom of the list. So we have to kind of reach out to sponsors and do cold calls and things like that. But again, it's not highly successful.
So long story short, if you did not fully fund it, yes, we would have to do something. What that something is, whether it's making a car that's not very good, or only doing 2 comps, or I mean those are those are basically our 2 options. Yeah, we would have to do something.
I have a follow-up question. If it's so important to maintain the international ranking, why have some of the departments cut back some of their funding?
That's an excellent question. I think every department has their own funding struggles. It's a hard sell to anyone. I mean, to you guys, to any department, come and be like, hey, I need this many $1,000 so I can build a go-kart. That's a hard sell for anyone. And if they can go, I'll give $5,000 to research instead. Like, you can't go and tell them, no, you can't do that. The funding, I mean, there's overturn. UMBC is not, the highest funded university in the world. The people that we're competing against, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10. I mean, they've got, budgets that are, well into 6 figures every year. They're a lot more generously propped up by their universities than we are. It's just the way things are. I mean, there's not a whole ton of money at UMBC.
There doesn't need to be, because we've gotten pretty good at working with the amount we've had in the past. It's just with things constantly changing at the university, turnover, new research projects, things like that, it can kind of be hard for the department to figure out where it wants to spend its money each year.
Any other questions for Sword?
Can you explain how the waitlist process works for a competition?
The wait list or the registration list?
I guess the registration list. Yeah.
So there is a wait list for registration. So this year they actually changed that process, but more or less the way it works is they open up and everyone gets on there and registers as fast as they can. In previous years, we've been able to just register for all 3. This year we are waitlisted for 1 comp. We're second on the wait list though, so we should get in. Usually 15 or so teams drop out either because they can't afford it, or their car breaks at the last comp and they don't have the parts to fix it, or something like that, or they just, SAE decides that we can have 130 cars at this comp.
Okay.
But yeah, it's basically just get in, get it as quick as possible, and then within 3 days we'll send you the bill and take the bill and get paid.
Any other questions for the organization at this time?
Which competition are you waitlisted for registration?
Local, Kentucky.
That's the Midwest?
I think that's the May one.
Yeah, the way that Illinois and Kentucky, the races are kind of like above each other this year. So the East Midwest thing is not as clear as it usually is.
Any other questions for the organization? And do you guys have any questions for us at this time?
Nothing staying now.
Well, thank you so much, guys, for coming in. I know it was incredibly short. But I want to make sure that the board has as much information as we can to make the right decisions, especially all things considered within the budget system. So, again, thank you guys so much for coming in, for taking your time to talk to us.
Thank you.
Oh, a representative from Molly.
Wait,
Oh, I didn't see you come in, sorry.
You are.
Oh my gosh. You're about to take a
Or
second.
read
You're just like, I don't
Okay, last time,
You're over here coughing cows.
The last time I looked over here was for Nithya, when she was asking a question, and I looked over here the whole time, so obviously.
she's
been there the whole time.
She knows she
You're
has
there.
essay.
Yeah,
Yes,
she
you
was
have.
always
I-
on speaking.
Yeah, he was.
I didn't even see her.
Cows.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Cows.
Take him off your team.
Cows.
Take him off your team. All right, so let's bring it back in, guys. We have a representative from Model UN here. So there were questions that need to be asked of that. I believe Tori would like to start. This is
I
Model
don't
UN.
have my stuff up if someone else wants to start, sorry.
So I think the main question was kind of registration, lodging documentation in terms of the request numbers were given were kind of the total amount and then divided by 16 so that we said going. But I don't think there was documentation in terms of where the main numbers came from.
Oh, okay, so, the main number for the UPA one, Virginia International Crisis Simulation, that is based off of numbers for the hotel price from last year, and that's on the conference website. I could provide a screenshot of that, if you guys would like, because it's not up yet. I don't know where I should send that to, I should just send that to.
Finance board.
Alright, want me to send that now, I can do that. And then, for the National Model United Nations, that total cost should have also been on the invoice that we provided, but if not, I can also provide that because, oh wait, no, we're not saying, okay. So for the N1, National Model United Nations, that is based off of a, just a booking.com, hotel price that we saw, that we would probably, reserve, that we haven't reserved yet, but.
The documentation for the New York one was just the $200 registration. That was
Okay.
all that was submitted, so is in the hotel, excuse me, in the hotel price, the usage fee, because I remember that from last year, the facilities fee, whatever
Yeah.
the hotel facilities fee.
Yeah, that's all inclusive for that. Let me see.
So, was that included in the hotel price that was submitted?
I think the, usage fees were included in the registration fees. Yes, okay, so the usage fees were included in the registration fees, because we're registering for N1, so I'm just
You're fine.
It's alright, it's late. We're all late.
yeah, I just got out of class, so. I just wanted to check out the registration, because that would show.
I think another question, if you don't mind me adding it up, because it kind of relates, was you mentioned deposit included the hotel cost. We were wondering if that was the security deposit that you anticipate on getting back, or was that something that would just go free to the hotel, or because
That's a good question because we had never encountered this deposit before, but I can. What was that? Oh. On our.
Yeah, it says it will be subtracted from the total amount you owe.
Okay, yeah, so
So
that
it's
is
not you don't get it refunded, it's it's
Yeah.
6,000, you deposited 1,000, now you owe 5,000.
hotel registration is not, okay, this one was, the hotel like registration isn't open yet, so we were going off of like the hotel price plus the $1,000. Okay, so the hotel room is $349 per night. And then $11 porterage fee, which is included, and then there's so I guess what we didn't understand was the deposit. So that comes from the charge, I guess, and not an extra $1,000.
Yes.
Okay, so I think that, so that should be 5980, I'm pretty sure. But let me just do some quick math here real quick.
Did you get everyone on this one again?
Yeah, but it's like.
Do you know how many rooms?
4 rooms, 4 nights.
4 nights?
Yes. Like, yeah, 4 rooms for 4 nights. So.
So is your organization booking the rooms through the model you win, or?
We're booking them through the Edmund website. So the website we registered through, and that invoice we would get once that opens, which is November 1st, I would say, or November 15th. Yes, November 15th. That's when those will be moved in. I'm very sorry, I'm like totally lost.
For the, you mentioned 16 undergraduate students, 2 non-undergraduate, is that your 2 advisors?
Yeah, that'd be our faculty advisor and customers, yeah. And those, like, we know that you guys have covered, so this is just for.
So it looks like the math for the rooms is, so it's $349
Yeah.
times 4, and it's for 4 nights, right?
Yeah, so 16.
And then times 4 for 4 per room. You were doing 4 per room or 4 rooms? You're
So
doing
4
rooms.
4 rooms for 4 nights, so it's 16. That total cost divided by 16.
The total cost comes out to, I think, $57.60 for the lodging, right? So it's $349
Yeah, 349 times
4 for 4. So that's how much it would cost for 1 room for 4 nights.
Yeah, times 4.
Times 4 again.
5584, and then divided by.
Well, so you have to then add in $11 a person. Oh, is it $11 a person per night?
I think it's $11 per.
Per person per night? Is that what it is?
I'm very sorry. This is
No, you're fine.
Just have to get mine, so.
Okay, so it's $11 a person.
so or like
So 11 times 16.
that's 176.
Plus 55.84, right?
What was the 5584 from?
349 times 4 times 4.
Oh yeah, yeah. And then so 5760 would be the total. Okay, so that is the actual cost. We thought the $1,000 deposit was another $1,000 security deposit. That's how we read it, and we were very confused.
Okay.
But
But it's 57.60
yes.
for the month. The lodging cost is actually 57.60, not the requested 69.
Yeah.
That's what we would consider.
Any other questions for the organization?
I'm,
Just go ahead.
So is your advisor coming on site with you?
Yeah.
And how do they pay for it?
we divide her cost and add it to ours. But we don't include that, we didn't include that in the budget because we know that like the precedent is that faculty advisors are not like covered. So we take that cost after like this price is given and we like divide it by 16.
So is it subsidized by the students?
Yeah.
So they indicate that the cost doesn't include the faculty advisor cost, so they're clear on that front. Mike, go ahead.
So, can you talk a little bit about, I see that you're charging each student $300. Could you talk a little bit about what that cost that you're charging the students is going towards?
So this is the price we charged them last year. So that we were funded about, I want to say, half of our lodging costs last year, and actually not much of the funding. That was the whole thing last year with our New York trip. But you guys remember it was a lot. So that was the registration fees, or the registration fees were covered, I think, or like half the registration fees were covered. That was based off of like whatever finance board had given us, and then the $300 per person made up for the rest of the cost. So that would be like the registration and the lodging within the Airbnb and the transport.
Any other questions for the organization?
Can I ask a question? What's the email again? Finance board?
Yeah, financeport@umbc.edu. Any questions for the advisory board? This is half with six legs. Yeah, that is the next issue reporter. The news is right there. All right. Any other questions for the org staff? Do you guys, or do you have any questions for us at this time?
No.
Thank you so much for coming in and answering our questions. I know it was short notice, you just got out of class. I apologize for calling you during class, by the way.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah. Not many people have class on call it that.
That was good. I called your treasurer, asked her, and she was like, yeah, I'll go ahead and call her. Then I got your text like 3 seconds later saying, I'm in class. I was like, oh.
That's fine.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming in.
Okay.
All right. We have a representative from SAU Snowmobile here, who's the treasurer of the organization.
No, I'm the
Vice President. Vice President, yes.
Our treasurer and president are both busy. So.
That's fine. We're going to go ahead and open up your request. I believe you want to start with this.
So cute. Okay. How you doing? I think last time I saw you was in this room, except you were over there. I don't know why I remember things like that. Okay, so just a couple kind of clarification points too. We did notice that you requested 500 in common vision when the highest package is 250. So just kind of wondering what the common vision was for the request.
Okay. I'll try to answer it as best I can. I wasn't a huge part of the. I'm assuming that would be for like a poster that we would be and some other presentation materials that would be taken to competition with us. Because we have to set up a stand in competition, so I'm assuming that's what that word is. I mean, it's a 250. But yeah, I mean, pretty straightforward things.
Okay. Secondly, we did notice that there was requests. Sorry, my vocab is like shut down right now. For advisor for state for building.
Yeah, I just heard you guys talking about that.
Yeah. So just didn't know where the claim in there was for Title IX, so we didn't know where that was coming from or like what the history was behind that.
Yeah, so that like the advisor had to
That has
go.
to do with advisors.
Well, it said that the advisor had to go because of,
Something related to Title IX, so we didn't know if there was.
didn't know if that was mandated by some part of, like an office in the university or something.
Or you're like, I don't know what that is.
I mean, I know our advisor has to go with us.
Okay.
Yeah.
It might
You
just,
know what Title IX is, right?
Yeah, I know the general gist of it.
Okay.
No, I don't know all the details. But I think the way that Annalyn is split up the rooms is we can't room with our advisor, obviously,
Yes.
and then guys and girls can't room together. So I think it was split up into the 3 rooms.
I think it was 4 rooms for students and then an extra one for the advisor.
Yeah. 2 rooms plus 1 for the advisor.
Oh, 2 rooms, sorry.
So it's 3
Two,
total.
yeah.
Okay.
So 3 rooms total, sorry, I was misremembering. And then I think the final question was just that we noticed that it's for 8 nights, but the competition ends, I wanna get the dates correct. I'm looking for the dates in here, but essentially it said that you were, the competition was ending one day and then you were leaving for another 2 days. We're just wondering why, you were staying the extra 2 days.
So was it we're leaving a day earlier?
Yeah, so that was
Yeah,
in
I
there, that totally makes sense, it's a
Okay.
far trip.
Okay.
Here it is, so traveling,
Yeah.
Saturday, March 7th, totally understandable, starts March 9th. Yeah. For this one, yeah, so traveling Saturday, March 7th, competition starts March 9th, and then, leaving competition site March 16th, but we noticed that the competition ends the 14th.
And we would be leaving Saturday. That makes sense. Is it 8 days in our?
Yeah, so it's a request for 8 nights for the hotel.
Yeah, that.
Yeah,
I'll
because
be
I
honest,
think the
yeah.
dates for their competition, yeah, it ends the 14th. So we just weren't sure, let me go back. Why, oh no, you don't have a case on this either. I don't have a case on mine.
Yeah, that, I mean, it seems to me like it should be
The 14th?
Yeah, and you would, or we'd be leaving, I guess, the 14th is the Friday.
Yeah, so it's, I mean, in the application, it's out of the top, it says it's over the 14th, and then in there it says you're leaving the 16th.
Okay, so we should be leaving the 15th.
The 15th?
Okay,
Okay,
because the
probably
Friday would
late.
be, yeah, I think it's like 15, 16.
Yeah, we look, oh, we looked it up, yeah. Like, what part of Michigan?
We were like-
Basically Canada.
It's really fun in Canada. Have fun.
So is it 7 nights instead of 8?
Yeah.
You can allow
7 nights, yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, sorry for not.
No, you're good. Yeah, that's why we're doing
right.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we want to make sure we don't just assume things when you have to be like, well, this is date, we might have gone with something lower, something you needed or stuff like that, so. Does anyone have any other questions? Michael, go ahead.
Do you have any supporting documentation for the hotel rooms and stuff you guys are planning on booking?
So we go through the SAA website. They have links to the hotel rooms in the area. I don't have it with me right now. It's just going to the website and looking up the.
Could you email those?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Just use like the link.
Yeah.
I think I found the link too.
If you go up, and they have 8 or 9 different. Yeah.
Registration, hotel and travel.
Cold. That's why they're going there.
He goes, yeah, I know. Like, I'm just saying.
They obviously make sense, right?
What questions does the board have?
So,
The gas request to see if that falls in line. You're good to go, sorry. Michael, go ahead.
so I'm sorry, I see a list of hotels. Do you know which one it is by any chance?
I'll be honest, I don't.
That's
Sorry.
fine.
I'll see if it's in like the request at all.
I'll
we're just checking to gas tax that would fall in line with university policy.
Oh, sorry. You're good.
Justin, go ahead.
So, I see you guys having fundraisers to help like with big club carryover account. Like, do you know how successful those have been, or like other sources of funding that you'll be using?
So we haven't had a fundraiser this year. Our first one's next week, next Tuesday. But we've also reached out to COET, the COET department, and CDE, which is the chemical engineering department, for like food and other funding. And then we also have a grid starter account that we've been I think last year we got 1,800 from the grid starter, so we also have that. We've used that to just purchase like materials and parts that we need this year.
Can someone check the mileage from UMBC to the event site, because there's different numbers in the budget request.
A lot.
Yeah, so one of them says 1,127, the other one says 1,227.
The way I see it is they're both such under, right, regardless. It doesn't matter, I should have a box. That's how many people is that?
We assumed 8 undergraduate students.
Yeah,
And then our
Saying
freshman
1,066 miles.
it'll depend which way.
For the research center.
Yeah, if you go up
This is
over the
going
bridge
through,
or around the bridge.
yeah, this is going
Get
up
told.
through, this is going to the north side of Lake Michigan. Is that what you guys plan?
It's in that all research.
Yeah, but I mean, like, were you planning on going north of Lake Michigan, or were you planning on going to the south side?
We haven't planned that.
It's basically, Ilse, go ahead.
Are you also requesting money for UMBC Oils, the professional?
Yeah.
Is that in your common reason class? You know?
Or is it a summer?
It's
not
not.
a house.
Oh.
We had, that's what you were.
Yeah, but lines and lodging and traffic. So, in the description it includes that,
Oh, it says polo?
in the description it's including like, funds that are being requested, include like travel costs and professional uniforms.
Oh.
Good catch. So on Friday, didn't we say that would go through some?
That would go through the cost. The question we just which part of the application is that included in?
I think since the only like line item or category, it's probably be condemnation.
So, yeah, some.
Scott, you wanna go?
So the budgets are for like all events on and off campus for the next semester. Some classes basically like an as needed in all teacher requests.
Okay.
And you get up to a maximum of $10 per item up to a cap of $300.
Okay.
Does anyone have any questions of the organization? Go ahead.
What is SH?
In the middle.
Yes.
I can add that.
Okay.
Sahas.
So we just have to figure out what the cost of the shirts were and take that out.
I think that's just in the commercial line item, we just have to do it for you.
But if it was the request is about $300 for the shirts.
You want to cut it to it? I think we can make that change.
Well, we should just figure out how much it was. And cut it to whatever it is, and then down to 250 from that. That's about.
Do you have the idea?
Can you text them and see how much the shirts are?
Besides that, does anyone else have any questions for the organization? No questions? If not, that's fine. Alright, once he gets the answer to us, then we should be good. Do you have any questions for us in the meantime?
Nope, it was also pretty straightforward.
No, you're free to stay. It's no problem. We can't kick you out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that all the organizations or was that all the questions we had for all these? I think so. We had Baja come in, Bajir reports came in, Mock Trial came in, Bottle UN came in, Snowmobile came in. Did we have questions for AICHE?
Is this the one that's like a competition,
Yeah,
but
but
not a
when you
competition?
look through the requests and they've only requested funding for those that like for the people attending like the competition.
Because you can, there's workshops there, right?
I know, but like when you looked at who is
Actually competing.
or like yeah, who's actually going, it's only the people that are on the two teams.
But they're requesting more people to go just to like watch or
The
participate.
lunch was for the public.
Oh, yeah.
Or let me look at
Yeah,
this.
and they also have the other.
Yeah, no, I'm just asking if it's like a workshop stuff. Like, are the 12 people going to all competing? Or you were required for the group effort? Oh, there's different. Oh, it depends. Yeah, okay, so everyone's competing. It's just two different items. Two different areas. So I don't know what the first one is. Isn't it true? She said yeah. Yeah, the
Can you go, was this one for me? I just need to have another request. No, I don't think I caught any of these people. All right. So do we have questions for AICHE? Can we go ahead and call them now? Do we have questions for AICHE? Are we Courtney Candace?
I don't think so. Let me look at the. Let me look at this.
Just making sure. We don't have to call them. That's perfectly fine.
What, wait for who? What is their,
AICHE,
what's their number?
128. I did too. I don't remember calling them because I didn't think we had any questions. I just wanted to confirm because that's the last work on the list. So if we have no questions for AICHE, I'm not going to go ahead and call them. All right.
Wait, well, did they submit documentation or anything for their, it says the hotel costs $300 a night, and for nights.
There's no invoice.
$50.
I don't believe that's not happening.
Sorry, I'm off topic. Well, I just saw something pop in my email and said Aladdin. On the
And what are you looking at?
I mean, we had like a common vision question, but it's not that big of a deal.
It was, yeah. 3 nights times $300 per room. Divided by 350. I think the only question I have could be something sent via email, as like where are they getting their hookup SOs? I don't think it necessitates them coming in.
I can go ahead and give my number. So
Sorry.
you can respond to 10:30.
Okay, yeah, I'll just.
Do you want my business cards? No, she's taking my card. No, I want so it's okay. This is my card. I can go ahead and text that.
Okay, awesome.
Thanks so much for coming in. Sorry for taking so much time, but it really gets a lot of stuff.
Thank you, have a good night.
You too.
This is why you need to carry your business card.
There's a photo on it.
Alright guys, I think so that's basically every club that's come and talked to us. Is everyone satisfied with the answers they received? Oh no, that was SA's fault, so they will come in, but they said the vice president might be able to make it earlier, and lo and behold, he wasn't. So he'll get back to that response, in the meantime, go ahead and open up the spreadsheet and start looking at numbers. So I went ahead, I'll open up a copy of competition. So I made the necessary cuts. So this is the thing I did to Snowmobile for their cost, Model UN for their cost, all of that. So the only thing that we would need to vote on and then potentially should cross over is, so the registration fee is $885 for Retreat of Poets, but I think that does include meal cards.
The $885.
Yeah.
Right, and that would be $50 for everyone, so that'd be $500 total, correct? So that seems like.
It's $50 which you would have onto the registration cost. And there's,
Yeah, but how many people are going?
10 people.
and there's 8 people or 10. Let's look at them.
There are 10 people going, 6 people competing, 2 coach students, and then 2 people who they want to
So
potentially.
each of those 10 people have $50. Wait, you know,
So how much?
those are non-registered.
It's 5 times.
Non-competing members have a different registration cost.
Right, but if each member has $50 for,
Oh,
the
yeah.
food, then regardless, it's just.
So can we check the registration cost just to make sure that if we do cut 500 from the 885, it should be 385, that 385 isn't even enough to cover registration, because I want to accidentally.
So it was 250
Wait, so how much
for,
did they request?
for the team registration, and 65 for the student, so
I was gonna say,
65 times 4
they've been going to this.
260, and then I think that was.
So they're
260 for the 4 non-competing students, and then was the team registration
I
250?
think it was 250, let me check though.
what's it called?
What's their number?
What's it called?
And that leads to 510, which if we get rid of the meal cards, doesn't account for the proper number.
So
And that other
Trigger
bundle
code
is
60, whichever counts. I have that math somewhere already.
That's what we say. A clap. We say it. We love to see it.
So team registration is $625, and then non-competing student is $65
So it's 625
for a team registration.
without the meal cards.
Yeah. No, with it. Okay, it says team may consist of 5 poets and 1 coach, 4 or 5 poets and 1 coach. An entire team can be registered at once.
Wait.
But you put in
$625 is how much the team costs. And the 4 extra people are $65 each.
Yeah, you said this one would include.
But-
So we're
Wait.
checking the websites to make sure that we pay for the registration but not for the meal cards.
The
Are
team
there
is
links
5
provided
people.
to the websites that we supposed to use?
Okay, so
No.
registration costs,
If the team registration is 5 people and they have 6 people, and it's an additional 65, is 15 or?
okay, so 625 for regular,
Or is this for non-competing?
for regular team registration, and 65 for non-students, or non-competing students.
Wait, but I didn't think they have to do team registration? They have to, because there's 6 people,
So 240, but that doesn't add up.
and then 2 additional.
This is where we get the 885 from. So question is the 625 with or without meal cards?
It is.
It says meal plan choice if desired.
And they said that they were doing it with meal cards.
But we're not.
So how much is that on meal?
I know, but I'm saying that that's the amount that they requested, right?
So
Well,
we're
we're
taking
taking
It
off.
doesn't
Open up
make sense.
They're trying to figure out what line items the food cards are in. That's what they're trying to do, correct?
Yes.
Right.
I'm trying to figure out, like, I'm
Well,
wondering.
it would, I think they did.
Okay, so the 85 registration fees comes from one team competition cost and then the 4 non-competing students. So if they did request meal cards, it's not in the registration line item. Unless this 625 does include meal cards, but at $50 per meal card, I don't think it would.
I don't think it should, because on the website it says if desired for meal plans, I don't think it's included in the 625.
Right, then it looks like they didn't actually request meal card money.
That,
Or if they did, then it's somewhere else. But lodging and travel seem to kind of all be set. It's not in travel because there's not enough money there. It'd be $500. So unless they mix it in with lodging.
Something else I did have a question on. They said that registration includes 5 team members, 1 coach. So, if we're already considering those 6 people, including a coach, then how did they get 2 additional coaches for,
So those were quote unquote student coaches, but what does perplex me is that they requested for 6 students to go. I don't know if maybe they're just counting one student as a coach or if there's certain specific coach requirements.
Is it team one?
so the team was made up of 5 students, 1 coach. That's the only thing it
Wait, I
said.
thought it was 6.
But since, well,
No. So the team registration
Okay.
is 5 students, 1 coach. They requested for a team of 6.
so maybe they weren't going the team registration, maybe they were just doing individual 6 people. Because there's an individual,
What's the individual rate then?
Well,
Is there not?
there's no individual grade,
It is $65 a person.
but they're not, that would be non-competing.
And even so, that
I mean, they have
65
student coaches.
65
But they
times
would-
10 would still be 650, and that still wouldn't get us this E85. What does get us the E85 is 4 non-competing students and 1 team registration. I don't think that's a coincidence.
so you're saying that they got 1 team registration without meal cards, and then 4 non-competing members?
Yes. Without meal cards. Together
Well,
that
that
leads to
makes no
885, which is that number right there.
But they want.
But I can't find it in the
Yes,
request.
but we don't know where it is in the request.
how much are the meal cards?
$50 a person, so $500. That's not the right math. Yes,
Can we
it
check the
is.
lodging to see if it's.
The lodging doesn't make sense because on their lodging request, it says it's only like half of it because they're expecting to use the 1,500 from the English department on it. Like, they're only requesting like about $2,000 in lodging, but they need more than that based on what they're requesting.
Well, for lodging, you said they're requesting $2,000, but if we look at the hotel receipts, the highest amount is like $1,297.
That's only for 1 room.
Oh, that's per room.
Yeah.
And they didn't state how many rooms they would need.
$50 are included in the.
It might be in there, but I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah,
Regardless,
the meal plan is
It's one
included in registration, so it's like designed.
No, it's a
But-
separate thing you have to run.
It's separate.
But that, for that
Oh, that's
625,
No.
it's defaulted with the meal plan.
Why does it say that?
Because when you look under the registration, like, I know you can take it out if desired, but how do we know that that 625 is with or without the meal plan? Like, couldn't you then take out the meal plan if
No,
desired,
because
so it'd be less?
this is what it says, when you register, you need to know these things, so you need to make that choice when you register. So it's saying a team may consist of 4 or 5 poets and 1 coach, an entire team can be registered at once, but you need the following information when you register them. So their name, email, t-shirt size, dietary restrictions, and if they're adding a meal plan. So that's by person, you can't get a meal plan as a team. So it's saying you can register everyone at once, but have these things ready.
Oh.
I think even if the meal plan was bundled in with the 625 registration, there was no option to not get a meal plan, then I think we would still fund it. But I think that was a hot contentious topic of debate last time. But I think still prioritizing registration fees, like if it just happens to include a meal plan, it does so. But if there's no option to give a team registration without a meal plan, then I would still want to fund registration because I feel like that's not the right thing to do. To be like, oh well, we don't give food, so because of that we're also not going to give you your ability to go to this
But I'm
competition.
pretty sure you the participants interested in meal plans can purchase through the online registration, so it's optional.
Yeah, it is optional.
So yeah, so I mean, I don't think that debate really applies because it's not automatic.
The question was if it was, we would still be able to. The answer is yes.
I mean, yeah, in the past.
So with that being said, I don't think there's any more cuts that need to be made to this spreadsheet in terms of stuff we can trim off. I think now we need to start looking at overall cuts. Let Scott go ahead.
Were the advisory stuff cut off for snowmobile?
Yes, advisor stuff will cut off for snowmobile.
So what, scroll over again.
Snowmobile is the second to last one.
And the 500.
How much money do we, no, how much money do we have total for 10 people? 10 people. 42 big ones?
Total for 10 people.
Is that limited to people who requested less than 10 people?
Wait, hold on. What are you on? That's not what my sheet is.
I think we're on copy.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I made the changes to this sheet.
Copy.
Keep going. You're almost there. How about for 10 people? Alright, 39.
I have so much to look at.
So is this,
Is this 8 people for your votes?
now is this representing the cuts that you had to make for, so like Model UN, their,
That's our reflected sheet.
is it reflected in the sheet?
In the copy competition, it should be.
Yeah, you're in the wrong tab.
Are you a competition or copy?
She's definitely.
Wait.
We're going through this whole thing.
And you took out,
I took out the additional night from snowmobile along with getting rid of the collection.
okay.
So it's done 7 nights.
Did you change that in the column F and requested like
Yeah,
requested?
yeah, she did.
Yes.
There's nothing else. The copy of competition sheet that I'm working on changing right now. Everything else is the same.
And so you cut the 500 accommodation for snowmobile?
We cut it down to for the 250 control.
But
Because 250 is the max accommodation that we could buy.
But the accommodation was for t-shirts.
We don't know that. We know they're requesting t-shirts, but we don't know that that's all the accommodation fund was gonna go.
They also said.
So why did we? So, but. Oh, okay.
But they're not sure.
Yeah, so they're not sure, but I don't want to assume that the 500 was just proposed
Yeah,
until we
okay.
get an answer back to confirm that. Which I have numbers to just yet.
Wait for.
So yeah, it's about 39 to 40,000, which means we're gonna have to basically do cuts in half.
What was the number?
Let me start messing with the numbers real quick.
So if you do it at 6, what do you get it at?
Yeah, just.
Do what at 6?
Yeah, I know.
Like for, do you want 6 people for everything?
Yeah.
I can make that call.
Wait, is it?
Other supplies?
Mama, you might just send their supporting documentation to the finance board email if you guys want to go ahead and check that out.
The draftsman.
What is this?
I want to stretch this more about.
I guess the other question is like, these ones that are smaller requests, like the 275, the 175, the 1200.
So yeah, I think we're gonna look at what we can do in the even split real quick to follow what we did with other options.
Before we do even split, I'm curious to hear how people feel about Baja. Personally, I am kind of engaged. I mean, I'm not really all that comfortable, especially considering most of what.
It's fine that you're doing this, by the way. You're perfectly safe. I mean, that's your right.
Then tell her. Because now it makes me think that since she's confused as to where she, I don't know if she's.
So they put enough information. We're asked what they put the cost on the card. So they file that under registration, lodging, or travel. Sorry, you guys were saying?
Nothing, there was just, Michael's trying to ask something for the larger group, and I know that we kind of made an agreement that side conversations, like, weren't gonna be a thing, so.
Understood. Sorry about that. She had a question regarding retriever posts because she's messaging the Preston's trying to find out information right now. Michael, go ahead.
I was curious about how the board felt as a whole about Baja's request for, in my opinion, just pretty much material split across 3 competitions. I think it is something that we are looking at funding, correct?
Yeah, I think it's still being considered.
Right, still being considered. Personally, I'm not all that much in favor for considering it, especially considering how it's mostly materials and it's not really going, I mean, I guess technically you can make an argument that it's going towards competition, but I feel like in terms of how we've been reviewing all the other orgs for competitions, this one kind of stands out in a different way.
Thoughts? Zane, then Scott? Oh, then Kenny?
I don't know, go ahead.
Zane, Scott, Kenny.
Oh, okay. I guess from my understanding, although it's 3 separate races and events, and the parts were the same, I guess from my understanding, they were just they're gonna interchange parts each time because they either wear out too much or they need to be changed. So I mean, and I know in terms, and we talk about support a lot of times, I know in just institutional support, I feel like we should do all we can to try to support. I don't really think they're trying to circumvent the system because it is 3 separate events. It just happens that they're using the same kind of manner to construct the car for it, I guess is what I'm saying. Because when you have mock trial that's kind of requesting the same type of thing, they're just not requesting materials, they're just requesting the necessary funds to get to each competition. So I mean, I'm comfortable funding them. I just think obviously our allocation per event is probably going to be lower than what they're requesting because it is such a large request. But I mean, personally, I don't see an issue with it because they are 3 separate events. They just happen to be using the same type of material and manner to go about competing.
They even said if we didn't fund all of them, just kind of running and still try to figure out.
We're gonna stop it over there.
Sorry.
You're good.
You can respond if you want to, Grace.
Right, so just kind of re-clarifying my more immediate approach to the situation is I'm not really at odds with the fact that they're splitting it up into 3 different events. My question is more about the materials. So I see this as materials do help them compete in the competition. However, I do feel that whereas they're requesting materials, things we typically fund under competitions are more like people going and actually competing in the competition. I know that org came to us and stated that they do have registration fees and stuff. I would be more comfortable with funding those type of line items versus just funding for materials the club wants to request to compete in these competitions.
So, I forget who, but me and some other people met with Baja earlier in the year. They get a lot of institutional support to fund the things that would normally be funded, rather than the materials for the car. And the people who met with Baja suggested that they request the materials that they funded under the on-campus event previously for off-campus events because they're creating the car to compete in the competitions.
Mm-hmm.
It is kind of different than what is usual, but I kind of like Zane. They build the car, they compete it, and then it's kind of like messed up, you have to rebuild it, so that's when it is the way it is, but that's.
Candace?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I was gonna say was, and my memory is foggy, but similar to what Scott said, they made a request for the fall as an on-campus event, correct?
Yeah.
And you denied that.
Well, we just
Yeah.
funded it to the $30,000.
Oh, yeah,
That was the one issue when they should
yeah.
have put it off campus because they're not
Because,
doing it.
right, so you said to them, you should put this as an off-campus event, which is what they've done. And so then there's questions about whether or not, like, I mean, you gotta let them live somewhere.
And oh, sorry, Zane, you had your hand up.
Oh, well, I was just gonna say that, like, I also, like, I understand the argument about, like, registration fees and travel and lodging, like, being more comfortable funding that because that's what traditionally we see for these types of things. But also, like he was saying, that they made that point before about, like, their department doing a travel agency, stuff like that, and, like, being able to call, like, their person and, like, stuff like that. Yeah, so, I mean, I feel that if they already have connections for that, I don't think it's worth, like, being like, oh, you know, we don't really want to fund your supplies, but, like, we'll fund your travel and things like that. If they're not requesting that and they already have, like, a main connection to it, that's, like, easier for them and more convenient and honestly probably cheaper because they're going through, like, a department that has the resources like that. So, I mean, I just think what Scott has said too, like, it's just, like, it's kind of weird because of the things that they're requesting is, like, material based, but, I mean, it's basically the same as, like, a mock trial or, like, a model event, but it's just that to compete in this competition, like, they need something physical to, like, race, rather than, like, model UN and, like, mock trial just need, like, their brains and, like, the money to get there and, like, travel, so.
And just for some historical context, those SAEs are probably asking for a third of what they did last year. So for those of you who weren't on finance board, I think Snowmobile asked for almost $60,000 for these competitions, and I think Baja asked around 40 grand.
I don't know.
One was 20. One was like 19
okay,
something.
one was 20, but someone asked for 60 grand at these. So like I think I think it's worth noting that they are making what's it called? Steps. They're making steps towards funding where I think some other organizations where those conversations have been had, like you all need to start trying to support yourselves, and those orgs aren't when it's very cheap, when these orgs are actually trying. Just like to keep in mind, and sometimes they can't control what someone else says that they'll give them, if that makes sense. Like Zane brought up, the department might say, we'll only fund for travel because it's easy for us to put in for that versus to order parts, like that type of stuff.
Thank you.
So with regards for them getting funded for like things that aren't usually like funds such as registration, lodging, travel and stuff, for registration it's not feasible for finance board to fund them because they have to register much earlier. Like at this point right now, as of like all three of those competitions are sold out. So they've already registered for those competitions previously because you either register or you get added onto the wait list. And the wait lists go almost like for some competitions 40 teams. So right now they're on the second position for the waiting list for one of that competition. So they wouldn't be able, like with the way our system works right now, they wouldn't be able to participate. They need the funding for registration. And I guess they were explaining that like the funding that they've requested for the parts and materials is only a portion of what the actual vehicle will be. And so the materials that they've requested are specifically like he was saying, materials that are consumable. Yeah, consumable. Because if you want to win the competition, you're gonna have to have like the best performing materials, not stuff that's already been degraded.
So my thing is like, if they're on a wait list, does that mean they're not qualified because they're using the same like? Because if they don't make it, because they're on a wait list, they haven't registered yet. does that technically mean they're unqualified for this program?
No, they've registered, so it's kinda like a wait list for a class. If, like, you've registered for the class and if someone drops, they're in.
But like hypothetically, if someone didn't drop, they just wouldn't go, would they even get their money back?
So if they did not go, it would depend on when the money was spent. So I don't know, to answer your question, cause it's not like it's a, like it's not like it's, oh, the event didn't happen, the money was never spent, I don't know.
Scott,
So I feel like it's getting kind of circular. We're gonna fund the parts or not. So can we take a straw poll?
sure. All those in favor of funding? SAE,
Yes.
SAE
reform.
Baja and snowmobile, or just Baja?
I don't think snowmobiles are
Baja.
less than
Baja, alright.
This,
Okay.
can I ask a question?
Yeah.
This includes the reduced price as well? Like, in some form?
This is, in general, do you wanna consider them for funding or not?
Okay.
Well, no, I just had a question, so like, I guess I kinda got lost, but like the waitlisting, like what, I don't understand that, they registered, but like,
They're second on the wait list to actually compete.
oh, so like people registered
I
prior
have
to
to
that.
have clear
Yes.
information for the straw poll. Alright, straw poll for SAE Baja. Funding them,
Consider or not consider?
to consider them for funding.
So all those.
It's
All those who consider SAE Baja for funding, please raise your hand. Opposed?
Stay in books.
Yes.
So have all the relevant cuts been made to this? Should we start trying to divvy up the money?
I think the only one you have to consider is the Baja event that falls in June.
Where else would they request for summertime events?
You don't typically fund summertime events.
Because your fees are related to fall and spring.
Do we fund any conferences over the winter?
Well, winter is considered.
Full winter's different.
You mean during January?
That's yes.
Yes.
Yes, we have.
Before, outside of the semesters.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's, or at least for this semester,
True.
there's like a request for something that is January 20 something. I don't know if that's like after this, I don't know if that's after the semester has started or not. That could still be during the week.
Yeah. I mean, historically, you haven't, ECS does not, again, this is on campus, but, I'm really sorry.
It's okay.
I didn't know my shoes made that noise. That finance board doesn't fund events that happen over the summer, at least on campus. So, I guess the decision is that going to apply to off campus?
We fund our own retreats.
Well, that's
over
different. Like, finance board, SGA funds your own stuff from your own budget, but like SGA does not fund student org
I
events.
mean, you haven't. So that's the
We did for Baja last year.
question, right? Well, I don't remember.
Okay.
I mean, in the obviously in the context of on-campus events, we probably wouldn't fund something because nobody's here. But I mean, the other thing that we've talked about was the radio station lessons.
That's true.
That one's the whole year.
That's true.
So I'm not like
As
yeah. I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I just think that it's just. I mean, when explained to someone like, you know, oh, why is there like funding that goes beyond, like questioning if the new finance board should be overseeing events like that, maybe like through some Haas, I guess that could be an issue, but I prefer not have an issue with it because it kind of falls within the same like academic semester because obviously June is closer to springtime when they would be doing, like budgets for that. Well, actually, I don't know. Doesn't matter. Because I guess if we were to approve it now,
It's in this fiscal year.
yeah,
so-
it's in this fiscal year. Yeah, because July 1st is the start of the, so I guess that could also be an explanation.
That's Baja.
You can just say Baja.
Baja.
Well, can I, Actually, never mind, this can be after the fact, go for it.
Well, I mean, like, my rationale is on, like, obviously on-campus events during, like, breaks probably wouldn't be funded because nobody's here. I mean, that's what I was.
People are here during summer, like for summer classes, just like people are.
Yeah, but it's
for
not like a
winter
large
classes.
portion of the population here.
And I don't think you pay an activities fee for summer
Yeah.
classes.
You pay for
You
winter?
do, it just goes, it goes to,
I mean, SAB or
I
RSA.
think we did summer.
So there
program.
isn't fee funding into SGA from summer classes, is what I'm saying.
correct.
Brian, Scott, Michael.
Can you come back to me? I'm just, yeah.
So if the issue is funding on break, we fund events for summer break.
Like, what do you mean?
Rock climbing club?
Without spring, you meant
That was
spring break.
Yeah.
That's
That's
still.
But it's still like, it's in between, I mean, it's like during the semester.
No, spring break is during the spring semester though.
Okay, so even though I was very much against funding Baja, since we've decided as a board that we would fund Baja, I think it's important to note very big justifications since you do want to consider them for funding because it does take time to build this stuff. It's not something that can just be done.
So basically the cost of the car divvy up between 3 different events.
Well, they're rebuilding 3 different times.
I think there's Scott's more special fact that they're rebuilding with like the exact same cost and the exact same price. Do you want to go into a straw poll on whether or not we want to consider Baja funding?
They've already done
Right.
that.
They've already done that? Cool. What did I miss besides that?
They're in the process of summer.
Summer.
Should be a fun summer things.
Personally. So my thoughts is I'm against funding for the summer. Just because I feel like when we fund for our events during the spring, like that's something that we have our jurisdiction over because we're elected officials. But once May 13th comes around, inauguration happens, we're no longer finance board representatives unless you like run for election, you win. The reason why I'm personally comfortable with funding for the summer is because I feel like we're funding for an event that shouldn't be our finance board's responsibility, if that makes sense. Granted, there's not really the way the current system is set up, like we will end up deciding for the spring for next fall. So it's like a weird situation, but I don't know. It kind of feels weird to me to fund for an event that we won't exactly get to be elected when we're going forward, if that makes sense. At least for us voting in the fall for the spring. But same in the micro.
Well, technically, so if we're gonna decide on this event, we're deciding it this budget period, so technically it's like a semester prior to elections, I guess. But also, I mean, I think we brought up that like the fiscal year is July 1st, but we justified that way that like we've used the money that was allocated to SGA. Because I understand like the responsibility part under the finance board, but if they're already funded, like it's not the new finance board's responsibility to like manage anything since the money's already been allocated and approved. So and that's where it comes from with that.
And just to add on, I think it's, like I said earlier, it's important to note that because of the fact that this is something that they're planning on using to build onto their car, not receiving funding from finance board this semester would be detrimental to their ability to properly compete, or at least find a way to subsidize the costs, since the timing would be, I guess, really hard with whatever the new board decides to do. So, I think at the very least, this is extenuating circumstances where I think we could at least justify the reason why we're giving them funding for this versus any other club that comes to us for possible summer funding or something of that nature.
Alright. Are there any other discussion points? Do you want to move into a vote of how you want to proceed? Alright, we're going to move to a vote. So all in favor of allowing for funding in this circumstance for summer funding for Baja, please raise your hands now. All opposed? Alright, that's where we stand. So we'll do considering that for funding. Next up, I wanted to bring back something we were discussing earlier, if it hasn't been done already, since I don't know how much I missed. but determining whether or not, considering the volume of events for some orgs, do we still want to do funding for organization or remain at funding for events? Also, you have something you want to say?
Sorry, mine was not relevant to what you just said. It was just following up with what Retriever Poets, what I found out.
Go ahead.
Should I bring, okay, just the 885 total is not including meal plans, so they did not actually purchase any meal plans. If they were to get meal plans, it would be an added cost on top of the 885.
Alright, so they didn't request meal.
They didn't request for meal plans?
No.
So why would you consider them for meal plans if they didn't request it?
No, because
They
in their
mentioned-
other information, they mentioned, like, they do, for, like, as an organization want to get meal plans, they didn't actually request it, but they might, like, through the English department. It was, like, listed in
So
other
In
information.
their application, they said we wanted meal plans, just in the numbers they gave us didn't reflect that they wanted meal plans.
Yeah.
So they didn't request meal plans through you?
No.
Yes, they didn't
It's
request
like-
meal plans in terms of,
Okay.
they said that they
So
did,
you don't
but they
even
didn't.
have to- So it's a non-issue?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ryan,
Hey, this is a return to your previous question.
go ahead.
I think we should fund organizations instead of by event. And I'm just curious how people that have a contrary view imagine the funding to pan out. If you're gonna fund, say, all of Baja and then all of the United Nations, then there's not gonna be funds left for some of the other organizations that are requesting things, right? So I'm just curious how you see it distributing if you're funding it by event.
Since we've done this before, I think it would make more sense to just kind of show what would happen, since we kind of talked about doing that earlier. We've done it for both of the other ones. For neither or in conference.
Now it's just gonna be funding for both versus funding for event.
Yeah.
We didn't have to do it with the others, they always.
Well, it was the same because each board member has to.
Yeah, so this is the reason why we're asking, do we wanna continue by the system of funding per event? So like the amount spread out would be $1,800 for each event. If we wanna break that down into funding per organization, and then be like, well, you have 5 events, and as a whole org, you get X amount. That's option B. Option A is just each event gets 1,800, and then we'll see where the additional funds lie.
I think the best compromise in this situation would be kind of a combination of both. I think funding by org, by splitting the funds equally between the, I believe, 5 orgs. And then, like they said, I'm really nervous about the situation that some orgs may be very frustrated with the fact that that they only got partially funded for some events, and they may cancel that event, and then we just have money rolling over. So that the follow-up would be funding for the event that the org fills, like, I guess, renegotiating line items as you're speaking of. I think that would be very important here. I think that's just the most fair way to go about this, if you ask me.
Alright, Justin?
I mean, so I think we could consider for a third option, because like, I get like some of these works are like taking up space, but there's also probably like a lot of students going, is that we could just like limit the amount of events, so like maybe 2 this semester, instead of like if your organization is asking for like 3 or 5 or something. I mean, that's probably not a possibility we could do.
Scott?
I think Tori was right that we're now doing the same thing that we did earlier again, but what we talked about doing earlier is by organization and then allowing the organization to choose where to put the money that they get allocated. So I think that we just stay what we decided with earlier and do it now.
Well, to be clear, the reason why is because we hadn't decided that. That was the last week that came up before Tor said that we would have to discuss this later, so I canceled the discussion. So that was the last last one, but I'm bringing it back up now. In terms of like, now is when we actually need to be talking about it.
I'm on board with that then.
Ilsa?
So if we're giving organizations the options to say which event that they want, like they want us to prioritize, like what's the timeline for that? Like are we going to then contact them and then like find out what they say and then make these decisions, or are we going to fund like the most expensive, or like what are we gonna do?
They would have to come in and tell us what they want, or meet with liaisons, and then liaisons to write legislation.
I think they'll all go through the chair to kind of keep things centralized. But I mean, on a short notice, we were able to get 5 of those clubs to come in here today to talk. So I don't think we're stretched by Friday's meeting that we could have that information should we decide what we want to allocate to each organization. But then the other option would be, so that's the proactive, but if you're worried about not getting responses in time and stuff, the reactive would be choosing which ones to fund and then allowing them to reallocate between line items and events. So they could adjust it however they wanted with the funds that they're given. So, any other thoughts or discussions on how I want to proceed? Ryan, go ahead.
So we have the 22,477 to distribute, right?
Yeah.
And you said there's 5 clubs. I think there's 6.
Six.
Yeah.
6.
Yeah, mock trial, mod UN, SAE and SAE, and then retrieval tolerance and AICHE. So 6 organizations.
So if we
Evenly distributed.
Yeah.
That is
$3,700.
But that's not really how you need to distribute that, if you're doing it like that. Because there's boards that asked for 100 and, what is this? There's a board that asked for 100, and one of these is for $175.
Oh, that's one of the.
So our trial ones.
Distributed amongst other organizations.
Right, and then there's another one for $795 or $65. That's Model UN. And, or no, wait, that's not right.
That's also mock trial.
That's not right. There's one that's 175, and then there's like, it's like junk.
There's like 275.
Yeah.
Well, that's
So-
the same club.
Yeah.
I mean, I think like if you can fund something totally because it's low cost, which is what you've done in the past, right, for these other, for competitions, you're like, okay, well, this is underneath, or like, whatever. Why wouldn't you just say, okay, we fund this because it's underneath this 3,000 whatever, we fund this because it's under the 3,000 whatever, and then you take the change and you, like, you redistribute it, right?
So that's basically what we'd be doing, but instead of doing it by event, you'd be doing it by org. Because you can make the argument that we've been doing it by org as well, since we've never had a situation where this is the first time where we had like the org requesting 2 events for one thing. So that's why we can make the argument that we've been doing it by event. We also make the argument that we've been doing it by org. And the question is, you know.
Yeah, well, you've been doing it by org, but you haven't been giving those orgs the opportunity to say where they want their money to go.
Because they only have one.
Because they don't have one.
Yeah. Like college
There's-
Republicans.
Like
Right,
for
but I mean, what
neither.
if the org was like, well, I want all of our money to go to registration,
Then we could do that.
but you didn't give the other orgs the opportunity to
Because
do
we
that.
fund per person, not per line item. Our budgetary statutes say that we have to fund per person, not per line
Okay,
item.
so I
they
think
wouldn't
that's
be able
the,
to just.
I think that, so the clarifying would be, you have this much money, and you can fund per person, how do you wanna divvy it up per person?
Yeah, that's what we asked for. Because in prior, there haven't been the 2 events. So we've been doing it by org essentially. Just each org only submitted 1 event for
Yeah,
conference.
yeah. I think that if you were to go the route of saying, hey, Lord, you have $4,500 and you have 4 events, how do you wanna divvy it up? You need to be very clear with them about what their multipliers are, right? So like,
You can give them the cost per person for each event and basically say this is how much you have to spend. The finance board allocates per person per event. This is how much each event costs per person according to our calculations. Where do you want people to go where?
and they can't be like 6.5 here and 5 and 4.5 there.
Yeah, that's basically how we do it.
Yeah, I think it would also be like, it would behoove you and them to meet and sit and like outside and just be like, meet for 15 minutes and be like, here's what it is, how do you want to throw down with this, so.
That can be arranged.
I don't know, I'm very ill, so.
Elsa?
You basically said what I was gonna say.
Elsa, is your second.
She's like,
Oh, no.
appreciate the fun.
I'm gonna pay for that plastic that was out there.
Live stream. So do we want to do that way since we might want to do it for so long?
Yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and put it, where's Justin? Alright, we're gonna go ahead and put it to a vote on termination of, is everyone okay? So this will be funding per org, and then giving the numbers to the org and figuring out where they would like to put that money. So that's the current plan in place right now. And then for the orgs that requested one event, such as the Poets and ASCHE, we can fully fund for those and then say that, I don't know about the numbers model you have, but like, kind of there, if the amount that the request is not enough, then we ask them how to divvy it up. So that's the current plan. All in favor, please raise your hands now. All opposed? All right. So each organization has, currently each org has $3,700 with which to spend. I'm gonna go ahead and search through these to see which ones. So Retriever Poets and AICHE only have one event each.
For the Baja team, since pretty much the money they're requesting is for more or less one purchase, do you think we can just apply the amount to the budget and then just, it's their money to use for the funds as they see fit? That's simple.
I'm okay with doing that.
Yeah, 6 months if you want. I can get it.
So I'm gonna do some final counts for you guys. Alright, while I'm doing these counts, if you will pay and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, we gotta do
Membership
There's no votes.
It is.
Oh, wait.
Shall I go get
yeah.
like,
So I'm just gonna read
Thank you.
don't eat all the food before you eat that.
This mock trial and then one mock trial, and report.
Oh, right, right, this one's mock trial, this one's report.
What is the different pieces?
Say X.
One's Alfred and sausage.
The total amount, yeah. But so I can find out the total amount, but I can't do that here. I can find the total amount online.
It's all
Which one, this one is this one? No, this is
Wow. They're not all yours. You gotta share.
What?
Unless you gotta pay for them.
Yeah, I'm gonna pay for it.
Alright.
Yeah, how much? But it's so good.
I'm not sure that.
That's a deal, man.
After the red cap, or is that fine? There'd be 9 if you had both. Right, to say there's seats.
Sam, how much do you want for like,
Oh, we're gonna have members that will pay for it. Go for it.
Are you on that? Hello? A big boss, not in approval.
Yeah, sure.
Oh my gosh, garlic. Wait, no, not are dangerous.
What?
And they have the glaze that I'm putting icing.
You got some twists on this? Ooh.
And sure, so, can you give me some napkins?
Oh, wings and dip.
Habanero.
That's a mess one.
Wings are bunch of them.
We'll just move shit. Yeah. Minus this. Oh, good.
This
You want napkins? Thank you, Zane.
eating Domino's pizza, Papa John's.
I should have cups. Oops.
Our girl was on the back. Our,
inspections and videos. Go on the mirror and every time I go on mine, it's too. Because it's complete 12 different websites, and I rather just go with it.
Well, these garlic knots are literally the best thing all time. I know. Thank you. Did everyone get something that they wanted? Ryan, did you want to?
Okay.
Sure. Do you want to leave?
Okay.
Feel better.
Thank you for coming. It's all what you did.
Garlic knot.
It's good for you.
Wow.
Those bones are clean, Justin. Graphene. Oh no.
You know,
I'm so hungry. Is the live stream still on?
Yeah.
Are people just watching it?
Yeah. Oh my god, ASMR Dane. ASMR, where do you go?
Like that comes for the drink.
SGA.
Alright guys, bring it back in real quick. I've done some calculations. So at the total amount, which is the 3746, we can fully fund Retriever Poets to go on their event. Yes,
Are you funding all 10 people, or are you only funding the 6 that are competing?
this would be for all 10.
Oh. Let's vote on how many people.
I would move to reduce the number of people. I know that we're given set amounts, but I do feel like there's something inherently wrong about the additional 4 people. I really do.
Alright, there's a motion to strike that number from 10 down to 6, getting rid of the 4 non-competitors, I'm assuming.
I think it's, can I hear the reason why? I'm interested to see why you think it's not fundamentally correct. So for me personally, I feel like competitions are for competitions, and I mean the other 4 people are more or less bystanders who aren't really contributing to the competition. So since we have limited funds that are primarily supposed to be used for competitions, I think it's only fair that we only pay for the people who are actually competing in the competition versus, I guess, spectators. So that's my justification for the reason behind it.
Myself and at least the staff, you guys okay with that? I would argue against for at least 2 of them, because while I agree that 2 people are going as just spectators, the other 2 aren't going as basically pseudo coaches. So I would argue that that's maybe, something for the board to discuss and debate, but I wouldn't consider them just spectators in the situation.
Clarification, one of those coaches is in a team of 6.
Right.
Only
so
5 are competing, 1 is a coach in that group of 6.
Alright, please.
Wait, so there's actually, wait, is there an order still?
Stop the drawing your neck.
Okay.
So I think we take a vote either to fund them at 10, 8, or 6. So what did you say, 7 is included?
No, 6 is included.
With
So
one
the
coach?
registration cost is for, a team registration is 6 people, 5 competing, 1 student coach. That's what it says on the website, and that's what it says in their request.
So they already have.
So on the team, yes, that would be included in that 6.
So there's actually 4 spectators, like not even coaches?
No, it's 5 spectators. You include the coaches and the group 6.
But that's already included in the team cost, so we wouldn't even consider it.
Okay.
Alright.
Alright, is everyone okay with moving into a vote on this, or do you want more discussion?
I asked how many, so there are 2 who are I was just asking, how many student coaches are there, and he said there are 2 who are non-competing e-board members acting as coach. Wait. should I ask a follow-up question? Should we just leave it? Should I ask if, like, if there's two,
I think
so would we be funding, like, the team registration for that and then one non-competing member?
So I think the question asked is, they mentioned that the team competition was 6 people competing, and they had 4 non-competing members going, 2 of them acting as coaches and 2 of them acting as assistants. I think the question to ask them is, according to what we know, the team of 6 should include 1 student coach. So why do you need 2 additional student coaches?
I think we have all the information. I don't think they do. So I think we should just vote to either fund it 6 or something else. So fund 1 team package or whatnot.
So just so everyone is aware, on the actual website for Upstate and registration, a team may consist of 4 or 5 poets and 1 coach. So they can't have 6 competing people. One of them, at least one of them has to be a coach. Just so that's clear.
Alright, so 5 competing players and a coach.
So we'll do this as a series of runoff votes. The first one will be to fully fund for 10 people. The second vote will, first one will be either 10 people or making a cut. And the second one, if we get there, will be 8 people or 6 people. So all in favor of fully funding for 10 people, please raise your hand now. All in favor of making a cut, please raise your hand now. All right, second year vote.
Actually making it 7 and 6, because if one student's already a coach in that team of 6, then if they have 2 coaches, that makes 7 people, not 8.
Well, I think even if there was a coach on that team, they think if there was 2 spectators going and 2 e-board members going as pseudo coaches. So
But
I think
that's the one person that they're not.
So I think the only thing that we know definitively is that 2 people of them going will be contributing. That's why I'm doing the 8 to 6.
Then that's 3 coaches.
Yeah. They've already indicated that they have 2 e-board members coming. Michael.
But did they indicate that they were having an actual coach who was not a member of their teams? I feel like they didn't.
No, and I don't think they.
I think, yeah, they're mistaken. Their knowledge of the competition, our knowledge of competition appear to be 2 different pieces of knowledge. We know that it's 5 people, 1 coach for the team package, plus 4 non-competing members. I don't think they realize that.
And I hope they realize that.
But we're going forward with the knowledge that we know, but also the knowledge that they gave us. So they said that 2 e-board members will be going as pseudo coaches and 2 people will go as spectators. So if we want to break this down, we can do 6, we can do 6, 7, or 8. But all I know for a fact is that 2 people going won't be contributing, so that was where the 8 comes from. But if we'd rather do 6, 7, or 8, we can do it on our vote from there.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. Thank you for saying as long as you did.
Go sleep. Flyer. If I see you tomorrow, I'm driving you home.
You don't want to say no, Brian.
See you when I come take care of you after surgery.
No.
All right.
Live stream.
So would you rather? So I'm gonna do a 6, 7, 8. It'll be a plurality vote. So whichever one gets the most amount of votes, should we receive in a tie, we'll go into a runoff between the 2 highest choices. Any objections?
So for funding for sites.
Yes.
Basically funding for the team registration.
Yes.
Okay.
So 6, 7, or 8 are your options. All in favor of funding for 6 people, please raise your hand now. All in favor of funding for 7 people, please raise your hand now. And all in favor of funding for 8 people, please raise your hand now. All right. We will be funding for 6 people.
Which is a team package.
We should also like include them.
Do it.
From the chair.
So that changes registration fees to $6.25. And then lodging costs at $2.10.
So the money that we're saving from River College, will that be evenly distributed to all the other clubs to increase their costs, their LMP?
Money left over from fully funding an organization
Well,
is
it's not.
evenly distributed.
Yes. No, we didn't vote.
That's a precedent set.
So how much does that actually cut out? So that takes
Like
out
2.
240 for registration alone.
Liam, do you want to put them allocated instead of the?
Yeah.
260.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna switch it to, when I'm actually the allocated ones on the actual sheet, this is just the sheet that I'm messing around the numbers with, since all my formulas regarding the projected. So I'll bring the total amount cost of this up to $2,097.29.
How does that look for, since we're only funding 6 people, how does that impact lodging or travel at all?
I've already adjusted the numbers as such, to reflect for funding of 6 people. Which would mean that we would have 20,000 left in the pot, divided by 5 wards would be that we can fund $4,076 for each of the other wards.
4,076 even?
Yeah.
Shouldn't this right
Or
here?
4076.05. Yes.
Shouldn't this number here be that number? But this is like the cap of 10.
Yeah. Well, this is total per person times 10. In fact, this is total people times 6. And it's just the total amount here. The total amount is just the sum of all of the projected costs.
Okay, so it's not like a cap and then some of them are benefits.
No, you guys want to know what the numbers were for 10 people, and then Candace wanted to know the numbers for 6 people. I gave those numbers. Okay, that's the total. So, next question I'm gonna ask, SAE Snowmobile is requesting, their total request number is $4,316.83, which is about $240 above this level. Are you guys okay with cutting into some of the other funds to fully fund this one?
We were also.
Oh yeah, let me, where's my, let's see if they got
I think you guys should decide if you wanna fund common vision or not with these requests.
I mean, cause,
2 requests.
yeah, cause I mean, I think in this case.
I just got back, he said the 500 for common vision included the polos, that's why I was going over the 250 allowed. So I'm assuming it's that, I think that means that all of 500 was for polos. So I'm gonna go ahead and mix that, see where our numbers lead.
It's t-shirts.
They'll do design with them, but I don't know if
They'll make the t-shirts.
so with polos, I don't know if they do polos.
They make sure.
Cause screen printing is for t-shirts, but polos are usually stitched.
Make sure.
If you get just a current polo, that's alright, never mind, we can fully fund that.
Fully funded.
With $9.21 to spare.
So that's minus the 500 for shirts.
Yes, this is with 0 competition. Alright, actually, I should put the first one. So all in favor of fully funding Richard Rapowitz for 6 people to go, please raise your hands now. All opposed? The motion carries. All in favor of fully funding SAE Snowmobile for the total of $4,066, please raise your hand now.
Is that under?
Yep, that's the number there is our limit. So this is how much is being requested. This is how much being allocated currently. So all in favor, please raise your hand now. All opposed? Alright, that motion carries. Let me adjust the numbers accordingly.
Oh. You've done this before.
Live stream.
What'd you say?
$4,080.29.
Yeah, so this brings the total to $4,078 and it looks like 35 cents. Hey, good math.
Did we ask Model UN if they were sending 2 teams to New York?
I think they just said it was all one big team. They said it was just one big team. I didn't know it was going to be reflected in who can make it and who can't. Because the month's going to be the big one. So that's $4,078.35 to distribute among Baja, Mock Trial, Model UN, and AICHE.
There was one Baja that was on the wait list, right? And then one that wasn't registered for or like
Okay, we already took the mock trial one out.
Oh, I just have a question.
Yes.
Oh, so I guess just I'm looking at this overall in terms of, so this 4,000 is the funds that we have left over after fully funding the events we just did.
That 4,000, yes, that's per organization.
Oh, per organization, okay,
Yeah.
never mind.
Whoa.
I was gonna say, I was like, is that equitable? Okay, yeah.
That would be kind of scary.
Yeah, I'm like, where are we going?
So it should be that 4,000 times what, 4?
Yeah. Correct. Yes, no. But-
Well, there was 6 total and we only funded 2, right? So there's 4 left.
We did Retrieval Poets.
Mock trial
It was
models
like for
and
Baja,
Baja.
yeah, they're
and
gonna get a
HE.
fraction of what they.
Did we do HE? No.
Is that full? Can I say full?
No, we are, but
Yeah,
because.
is that mock trial model event?
That's the one we have
Yeah,
left
yeah.
because we funded retrieval posts and we funded.
So we can allocate $4,078.35 to each club, and if these are the numbers, oh shoot, whoops. This is the total amount that each club is requesting among all of their events. So we would ask the clubs, give them basically, hey, you have $4,078 that we can give you. These are the requests. So Model UN Total is requesting 11,000, Mock Trial 7,000, AICHE is 8,000, and Baja is 20,000.
So are you going to ask AICHE what line items they want?
No, AICHE we're gonna fund the person because they only have one event. So
So you don't have to ask them then?
no.
Okay.
Yeah, not that I realized. I'll do those counts in a quick second. But this is just what the numbers are currently looking like. Let me go ahead and see how many people we can fund, given the current amount. Theoretically, we could fund 6 people for the event. 6 people total will be $4,030. Yeah, so AICHE is the second line item right here. I wish I could place a pointer. The total for 6 people is $4,030, but the total amount being $4,078. We can't really allocate more than that. So you guys okay with voting on that one right now? They only have one event, which is why we're bringing it up. Right, all in? Yes. AICHE. I believe they have $20
$20, yeah.
collision fees.
No, they answered no. That was that entire
So you guys okay with the request as is?
I guess my always question is, and I don't want to bring this up all the time, but is it possible to like overspend in this area? Or is that just like,
We can,
should we
but
over allocate?
in order to fully fund them, we'd be over allocating by $4,000.
How much would it cost to round each person up to them?
Or just like
Let me check those real quick. So if we wanted to round to 6 people up to 7 people, it would be an additional $700.
I think it's best practice not to go and round people up. I think it's best to stay with the number of people our money can fully fund and taking that money and reinvesting it elsewhere, other than rounding up and deficit spending, so.
Lydia? No, I have a comment.
I don't know if this helps or not, but, for last semester we funded SASA for a Juba, and a Juba has not happened as of yet, and I'm not sure if it will happen, so. That is a request for $4,900.
All that money is gonna roll back into the main pot. So yes, we can over allocate. I'm hesitant to over allocate now, considering that all of the costs per person were exceptionally high, at least over $500 with the exception of those 2 mock trial events. So I think over allocating to get 1 additional person, each one is gonna rack us up a pretty big total. And the more that we over allocate on here means the less that we should be over allocating for on-campus events, which is where I'd rather do our over ideally the board doesn't spend under 10% more than the estimated budget. So we typically over allocate by around 10%. That's what we did last semester. But in this situation, I think we could look at potentially doing, but whatever funds roll back from here, in terms, we've already over allocated for the NIDA section. I think we did a little bit for competition. I'd rather save all that for on campus personally. If you guys would like to make a vote to increase the numbers by 1, that's fine by me. Just as the chair, I feel obliged to tell you as a fellow representative of the legislature that if we do start to go over those numbers, I don't want the competition over allocations. We only have $20,000. So if we give one additional person, like one more, that could easily be over allocating this by $5,000. Even at the lowest, 3,000, but still that's an incredible amount for this cost, if that makes sense. I'd rather not over allocate 10% on each one, because that gives us more leverage opportunity to over allocate closer to 15 to 20% for on-campus events, if that makes sense. But I'm willing to hear thoughts on opinions on that. Michael,
I second what you said.
I'll be very interested to see how much actually rolls back with this new system and if it impacts rollback at all. Because historically we know how much rolls back, but I think with this new system there might be less of it.
Yeah, especially since what was kind of popular events planned out a lot more ahead of time. It's not a situation of they request funding and then they're like, well, we can't have it because something went wrong. Like they have a lot of time to do it. But I think that would be interesting to see. That could be a precedent for future boards to take. But back to the main point at hand. Is everyone okay with AICHE being funded for 6 people, with the total of that being $4,030, which is under the limit here? And then we'll take the additional money, spread it out again to those 3 organizations, contact them, see where they would like it. And then I think what we could do if we wanted to over allocate would be if they would like to send certain people here, but they're like 100 or 200 over, then we could look at doing it there. Once we get responses back from the 3 clubs that have multiple events. So all in favor of funding AICHE for the total of $4,030 to cover 6 people, please raise your hand now. All opposed? All right, the motion carries. Let me do the final bit of calculation.
Do you like pictures in? You can do it.
Yeah, Zane likes to cause.
Cows. I like to call some of the shops. Each. I'm like the goose. The ducking.
The goose, the goose, and you said it's the ducking.
If there is not chaos already, I shall create it.
Oh, the ducking.
Wait, is that next to me?
No, it's
It's like if there's not a couple already, I will start. Something like that.
See, which you guys want to play that on my Switch after meeting. So that leaves us for a total of $4,094.46 for each organization to allocate amongst all of their events. Michael wants to go ahead and look at Baja since they're doing a blanket request for all 3 events. We figure you might as well just put all this into one event, just to at least get that in like a vote mark on our minutes that we're going to be doing that. So are you guys okay with that? Any questions?
What is the amount spread out?
Oh, this column? So this was when we were originally doing per event. So this was the total amount, which was 22,000 divided by 12, which is how many events. I changed the one for AICHE to reflect this number right here.
Okay.
Just to see where that magic was. So it's right next to it. So all in favor of funding, we'll go with Baja East for $4,094.46. Please raise your hand now. All opposed? All right, and that is carried on with this. So I'll reach out to those organizations, letting know their options, the cost per person for each event, how much they have to spend, and then we'll see what we get back. But once we do that, it'll simply be a matter of you guys approving that vote, or if they're like really close to funding one additional person for one, then I think we can move to over allocate just a little bit. Besides that, we're pretty much done with off campus.
Can we just get like do you have like a chart with like, I guess, the total number for each?
The total amount each club is requesting.
Well, not
I'll carry for you.
I have that if you go to, like, into the folder and you
Go
go to Scott, Hulu, $1,000, and that's what's in there.
What does that stand
It's a face.
It's good.
Yeah, man. You're on my screen.
They know. If anyone's ever met me, they know.
Do we need to strike the two funding for Baja?
I think we're gonna keep it on there since they could theoretically reallocate to line items. It's like a weird thing, but I just want on record that way they understand. Alright. With that being said, we are done with off-campus events. Considering the time, we are going to wait until Friday's meeting to start with on-campus events, if that's okay with you guys. During that meeting, we'll probably start by basically just going through each of the requests and trimming as much fat as we can. It's going to be a lot, unfortunately. I'm sorry about that. So make sure you guys come prepared, have your things open. Basically, just gonna bang through each request, be like, how much can we trim off there, and then we'll go to see what cuts we can make. We've already started looking through the spreadsheet numbers, and according to Tori, there are several organizations that are over the $33 limit, and other organizations that are over the $12 for food limit. So we already have cuts that can be made there that we're going to start off with. I think we're pretty close at whittling that pot down. We just got to cut it in half.
No, we're on that.
I also think that a lot of groups put in like a request more than once. Like
For the same event?
For the same.
Yeah, for the same thing, like, there's one event, I haven't actually looked in to see if it is, but just based on the spreadsheet, like, some numbers just look weird, or like, they don't have any attendance in for some of their events. So, I'll actually look into the request actually in SurveyMonkey. I just haven't done that yet.
Are they the fake ones?
Well, I mean,
I deleted the fake ones, because the fake ones were on there.
Have you already added
No, the ones that we did.
Oh,
No,
the
I was
whole
hoping
thing
to
is
get
made up of
them.
every single application that's been started, so.
What's that report?
There are several applications that haven't been.
Do you still have a copy
Or
of
like
the
not
information without the ones deleted?
Yeah.
Alright, that's where you're
I
gonna.
didn't actually, so I can.
But that's on your device.
Yeah,
I would get copies of them.
Alright, that's fine.
I didn't touch yours.
Alright, Scott?
Or did you write down the precedents, or is that homework?
I did not write down the precedents. I wrote them in my notebook, but you didn't really set any like strict precedents besides River Poets that you were only funding competition, and then besides that, you pretty much did it even across the board. So.
I think it's just individual rationales, and I'll have that prepped for when we vote on everything.
So we're voting for everything Friday?
Yes.
So we're gonna bring in the clubs, finish competition, and then pass all the legislation for off-campus, and then release that on Friday?
I'm okay with that. Well, it needs to be signed by Brenda, so.
Brenda's asleep, it's okay.
I meant to sign legislation.
Be here on Friday.
They're gonna release off-campus stuff.
And
Essentially is what was.
then, yeah, so we'll release off campus, that should probably maybe take like, hopefully 30 minutes or so, max 45. I'll see what rationales I can have prepared ahead of time, but I would like you guys to vote on each of the rationales as you're voting along with the request numbers, that way just everyone's on the same page as to why we did what we did. With that being said, are there any announcements? Anyone got anything?
Okamoka is supposed to open again.
Oh, yeah, it's November 4th. There's like a email.
Wasn't it this one?
I don't remember.
Oh, I have an announcement. Popeyes is bringing back its chicken sandwich on for permanent November or something. It's like a Sunday. But come on, man.
That's shady, bro. They're releasing it on the Sunday?
Yeah, they're releasing it on, I believe it's November 3rd because it's a Sunday. Scott?
We get our first quarter stipends Friday.
So on Friday, your paycheck should either arrive at your house or arrive in your bank account. We have direct deposit set up. But yeah, Okamoka's a thing. Make sure you're getting in your SRC reports because we will start doing those reports in about 2 or 3 weeks. Any other questions or any other announcements that anyone has? All right, cool. With that, I adjourn our meeting at 10:24 p.m.
Recognize.
What?
You recognize.
Yeah, no, I'm saying I'm adjourning the meeting at 10:24. I thought we had recognized this.
you do that?
Oh my god. Well, I'm gonna go this way now. I recognize that Zane is present, Elise is